Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Fighting Layer arcade video. Now in this one I'm just going to show you the other two sub-bosses, Joe and Clements, which for some reason I thought his name was Clarence, but I guess that was kind of close, and their animal bosses, which were the bird and the shark. But before we do that, I just realized there was something I didn't show you in the first arcade video, which is the ADS data, which honestly I don't think I even looked in here myself. But this is the data that shows like the usage of the characters and everything. So you can see this board has been on for like 22,011 hours. So wherever this was used, it was used an awful lot. One player play was 8,774 hours, and it looks like the one player continue was 80 hours, and then there was some versus play of 625 hours and change, and it looks like the all play, meaning all the time it was played, was 9,481 hours, and there's 125 free play coins. Those were probably mostly me, but let's go to the next page, and here is your usage data. You can see that Shang was the most used character at 27%, Alan coming next at 15%, Kato coming next at 13%, Hong at 10%, and then everybody goes down from there. Like you have that ninja guy, Sesiu at 9.8, Blair at 5.4, Jigjid at 3.1, George at 2.7, Joe, who is actually one of the sub-bosses, at 2.6, Janice at 1.8, Ajax, who's the sub-boss I faced in the first part, at 1.7, Clemens, who's the sub-boss you'll be seeing today, at 1.6, Lan, who's the character I played as, at 1.4, Exodus at 1.4, and Caprico, who's that like crazy fish looking thing, at 1.4. But it looks like, yeah, you can see how much each of these characters has been played, with the most played character at 22,551 times. So yeah, suffice it to say, this board has gotten a lot of play in its life. And then here's your win streaks. You can pause on this if you want to see, but suffice it to say, Blair players won the most, followed by Kato, Jingjid, Alan, Ajax, Shang, Hong, Joe, and so on. You can pause that if you want to. That's basically the most wins of a character. And that's all for the ADS data. But I figured I'd show you that, since I did not show you that in the first part, and I typically will show that, but honestly I kind of forgot. But now we will move on to the sub-boss, the other two sub-bosses and the other two animal bosses, and yeah, take a look at this. Okay, what I decided to do was record some footage of the other characters from my other gameplay pieces, since you only got to see 4 characters in the original video, so in this one you'll see 4 more. So if you want to skip to those gameplay of the bosses, skip to 9 minutes and 50 seconds. But here we have Shang. He's another one of the characters in this game. And the cool part about this game is all the characters kind of have their own like unique way of fighting. So they have all their own super combos and everything. So with this video and the other video combined, though I've only not shown 3 characters, and all of the characters kind of have their like crazy combos like that. Like my character has the move where she does a lot of kicks and everything. And as you could see, Shang actually did 2 different moves. One was a regular combo, and then one was like with Lan here. She does one that's just her hard attack over and over again. So that's what looked like Shang was doing there. And you'll see in this video that they'll all be like different stages in the game, because I think this was stage 1 for Shang, and then stage 4 here for Exodus. Now Exodus is one of those characters who can be a little bit annoying, he has like these fire attacks that make me think of Dalcium, where he'll throw a fireball at you, and it'll do that whole thing where you kind of like get burned and you can't recover for a little while. And in the later stages especially, he'll spam that a lot, making him a very hard character. And he does have a few wrestling moves as well. See, that's what I was talking about, where you see like my character was on fire and just kind of like flailing uncontrollably. And the reason why all of these characters are cut a little bit is, well, for Shang, of course, because he was round 1. And I think the round 2 after that, for that video, was a character I had already shown. So I didn't want to show that character again. And yeah, as I said, Exodus will spam that fire attack as much as he possibly can. And it just gets old after a while. And he has that weird move where like a folding chair just kind of spawns and he jumps off of it. The cool part is there's actually quite a few stages in this. And as you'll see in a little while in this video, even the sub-bosses and the animal bosses all have their own special stages that aren't anyone else's. And now we're going to take a look at Hong here. This is one of those battles that I remember correctly in one of my various gameplays of this, and there you actually saw a hard reversal done by the AI, but I remember this was one of those gameplays where he just kept defeating me, and no matter what I did, I couldn't win. Until, of course, the footage you're seeing right now where I finally did win. He's another one of those characters like, I'd say Huorang from Tekken, who just has like a lot of kicks and a lot of quick moves that he can easily beat you without like you even like blinking. And I was glad to finally be able to defeat him when I did this gameplay. But unfortunately, gameplay number 5, which was the one that actually made it as the arcade video, was the only one where I could actually defeat the boss. And I remember I was so happy when I defeated the boss, because I never thought it would happen. And what I was going to say about the hard reversal before is, I probably said it in the arcade video, but it basically is when, like, you're down, you hit 2 buttons, and your character will kind of, like, just instantly recover and do, like, some kind of super move. You win! Whereas with Lan, it's that kick where she comes up from the ground. And as you can see, this fight with Tetsuo is actually the same stage I just faced Hong in. And what I've seen is any of the actual propaganda and advertising, Tetsuo always seems to be prominently featured like in the front, as he's like, this character's like Ryu. He's like the face of Fighting Layer. Well, on any of the advertising I've seen for this game. And he has a lot of crazy moves, just like any other character in this game. And if you're not careful, especially when you face him in the later stages, he will defeat you very easily. And I know a lot of people look at this game and think this is like that awkward stage of 3D, but honestly, I really like the graphics in this game, and I like how everything looks. And I still find it unfortunate that this game never made it to any game console, or, of course, outside of Japan and the arcades. You'd have to be lucky to see this game if you didn't go to a Japanese arcade. I'd think the only place that might even have a chance of having this would be like that Galloping Ghost arcade, because they had a lot of games that other places didn't. Like, they even had Dead or Alive Plus Plus at one point. You win! Which, if you've seen my other videos, you'd know that I own the marquee that they used. Now, this is actually the shark fight from gameplay 1. And of course, what makes this extra hard is that you only have 1 round. You can't do best 2 out of 3, which that would even be harder if you had to do 2 victories for one of these animal bosses. But what happens is if you don't defeat the knight earlier in your gameplay, you do not get the choice of who you get to fight at this point. You can only fight the shark if you lose to the knight. But the nice part is the knight fight is the only fight that you can lose without any problem, except for, of course, having to face the shark. I can remember when I first played Fighting Lair, I was like, you have to fight a shark? And I can remember this reminded me a little bit of facing Doral in Virtua Fighter 2, because you're underwater. But the gravity isn't nearly as slow as it was in Virtua Fighter 2, so you don't like float up in the air really slowly and come back down. It's only a very minimal effect in this stage. So yeah, if you're not good at the knight, this is the boss fight you will always have. It never changes. Whereas if you beat him, you'll have the selection between the three animal bosses. And then of course, when you end up beating the shark, you have Clemens here, who's kind of like the wrestler, and he has a lot of like throw and grab moves that he'll do to you. Speaking of which, but he has a lot of throw and grab moves that he'll do to you, so you gotta really be careful there. But I'd say of the three sub-bosses, he's the one that I tend to have the least hard time with. Although then again, as you'll see later, there's only one time that I actually faced the Boxer Joe, but I didn't do too bad against him. I'd say of all the fighters, the one that gives me the hardest time is Ajax, especially when I first faced him and he had that, like, weird string move. And as I'd said earlier, all of these sub-bosses and animal bosses have their own stages, which is kind of cool. They don't just give you a generic boss stage, if you will, like some games do, where you get to the sub-boss and it's always at the same place. No, they have their own place that they fight in, which is actually pretty cool. I can remember when I first fought this guy, since I had only ever got to the shark, and it took me forever to beat that shark, I'm telling you right now. He felt almost impossible, and then of course the boss came around, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's definitely impossible, and 5 recorded gameplays later, I finally beat him. But that doesn't count like all the times I was beat by him when I wasn't recording, when I was first playing the game, and I was trying to get, like, good. And of course, I can't explain why Lan was the character I picked. She was kind of one of those characters that I thought she looked cool, and then I just kind of got used to her fighting style, and got good enough that I could actually beat some of the characters without looking too button mashy. You win! And of course, that was Clemens there. And now here is the last of the animal fights, which is the Falcon. And now, the thing about facing the Falcon is he will swoop down, and then, kind of like Alpha 152 in Dead or Alive 4, he has this, like, thing where he swoops down really quick, and then goes back up, and then keeps doing it. So, if he starts doing that, and you can't get out of the way, it's almost impossible to beat him. And I found the best strategy is to use the Fierce Kick, and just do jump kicks as much as possible to just basically take as much of his health out. And I want to say this was the second time I ever fought him, and that was that swooping attack you saw there, because I've had times where he just simply spams that attack, and you can't get a hit in edgewise, so there's no way you could possibly win. But he's another one of those bosses that it just took a while for me to actually defeat him, and then I eventually did, and it wasn't a problem. But even when you do face this boss, it takes a bit to actually beat him. But just like all the animals, they're just difficult because there's something other than just like a person who will stand there and like you have to punch them. They're a character with a very erratic fighting style. And here is Joe the Boxer. You'll see he has a few moves, although the only thing that baffles me here is you're not in a boxing ring. Like, Clemens was in a wrestling ring, but Joe's just kind of in this, like, temple place. And the funny thing is, what you're actually seeing here is the one and only time I fought him, and I actually didn't lose at all, which I was really surprised I didn't lose against Joe even once. I was just being quiet for a second so you could hear some of his voice samples, as he does sound kind of cool. And I remember as soon as I saw him with like these crazy like gloves on his hands, I was like, I better stay away from him because I'm sure he'll kill me really fast, especially when he has spikes on his gloves.
Are you right? Are you ready? Go!
But if you play this game and you're not so good, just like me, "Are you right? Are you ready?" is something you're gonna hear an awful lot, because every time you face a new fighter, you hear, "Are you right? Are you ready?" And of course, when you continue, you hear, "It's time to find your fighter." But yeah, that's Fighting Layer. Very fun game. I really highly recommend it. And of course, if you stuck around this long, then right after I finish off Joe here, you will see the endings cutscene and the credit scene without any commentary. So take a look at that, and this has been another Game Nexus video, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Wonderful.